Ryan Abbott, welcome to the Preconstruction podcast.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And look at that man, everyone. Look how fresh he looks for what is it, 4 a.m. Phoenix time?
5:15, but yeah,
5:15. You would have been up at 4 a.m. So really appreciate you getting up that early and taking the time to speak to us. So for anybody that doesn't know Ryan, he is president of Clayco Southwest and he is based in Phoenix, Arizona. So we're going to go through your career, talk about all the complexities that we're facing right now within construction. So let's go back to the very start, Ryan. Was it always construction for you?
I think early on, so my dad was in the Navy. He flew during the Cold War, and so we moved every couple of years. And one of the things that I came to recognize was just how the built environment impacted the communities that we lived in. And boy, buildings could bring people together. They could also push them apart. And one of the things that I saw there was how great it would be to have a tangible product for my life's work, right? To have something that you said, hey, I spent my time doing something, and I can actually go up, look, and see it, and point at it. And I think my wife and I drive the kids crazy, pointing at all of the things we've worked on over our careers.
Brilliant. Oh, so she's in the game as well.
She's an architect from a long line of architects. So we're fully integrated as a family here as design build.
So there's no slagging architects on the at the dinner table. Good, I like it. I'm sure there's a good conversation around that.
Yeah, that Thanksgiving is very interesting. My father-in-law is an architect. My brother-in-law is a consultant in space planning, and then my wife's an architect. So we get into it during Thanksgiving for sure.
I love it. I wouldn't mind being a fly on the wall there now. So it was always going to be construction. That's good. And then obviously Bachelor of Science at Arizona State. How was that?
So from the College of Engineering, a very technical degree, I wanted to understand how it all worked, right? What stands them up and keeps them up, and then how all of the interlocking disciplines work around the built environment. Um, but yeah, very technical degree. You solve everything in that degree using mostly math, right?
Love it. Yeah, yeah. And one of the things I always like to ask within the degree, how many modules or how many assignments were associated to estimating and pre-construction? Did it get much?
We had a couple of courses that you had to take, market impact and then make a change in. So there was some, but not a lot. There was some productivity, there was some finance, but most of it was around the technical basis of what makes something stand up and stay up, right?
Brilliant. Yeah, love it. And then something that caught my eye, you then went back in 2006 to do a master's in business administration. Talk me about the thought process on that, because before that, you were a project engineer.
Yep. What I came to recognize was every single project that we had was a unique solution. It was a really custom moment in time, and it was the people that were involved. It was the financing that was available to do it. It was the dream of what the facility would do. All of that really went into this recipe that became a project, and I really wanted to understand how all of the business impacts and inputs and outputs came to bear on that project as well. And then I also recognized getting to the right engineering solution didn't matter if you couldn't find the financing to make it work. And so it was a way for me to one network with a whole bunch of people that needed projects, and then on the other end wanted to understand how their businesses would work around the framework of capital expenditure.
Love it. And were you going through, because I speak to many people that believe that to get to the next levels, a degree or a master's is imperative. So you've obviously kind of climbed the ranks. How important was having that master's?
I think that the actual letters after your name are less important than the understanding of the curricula around it. But I'll give you a couple of great examples. I learned more from I went to night school to get it. And what you'll find in night school is just unbelievably hardworking people from all different walks of life and all different businesses. So in my classes. We had folks from Procter and Gamble who understand supply chain like nobody else. I mean, they're amazing at supply chain. We had folks from Boeing and Honeywell, American Express that were building financial models, people from Intel who were, working in the microelectronics fields. So I learned more and networked more with my peer group, and I think that was more tangibly powerful than the actual degree, having letters after your name but also taking that knowledge, that network, and being able to build upon it is probably the most important thing, or the most important advice I would give somebody is, don't look past who's sitting in the chair next to you if you're going to go and, endeavor on something like that.
Love it. Great feedback. And the supply chain, who would know that you would need it so much the decade after 2008? So exactly, money and time well spent. Straight after that, SUNT for 21 years. What a great 2 decades at SUNT. And again, climbing up from Living and Learning Laboratories VP, Science Technology Group Leader and Senior VP. How was your time there?
But SUNT is a great organization. It's fully employee owned. There is really that ethos of every single individual that works there feels like an owner of the business. So a great culture to learn about risk and reward in our line of work. A great business to really be responsible for those in your care and look out and make sure that you're looking after their ability to make life decisions, to invest in their children's education, to have a retirement. So I learned a lot about culture there. I learned a lot about the hardworking people that it takes and the skill it takes to do what we do for a living. I also learned a lot about how a business responds to the market outside of its walls, and the way that our life's work really is getting paid to solve a problem in the world, right? And lining all of that up there was really powerful for me.
Brilliant. Love it. And then obviously over to Clayco. Now, give us an idea for anyone understanding. Listen, we all know Clayco and we all know the fundamentals of Clayco, but talk to me now about the business units in the Southwest and what you guys are concentrating on.
Yeah, so I think of Clayco as more of an Eastern idea and how a company is formed. So lots of affiliated businesses, and they're all wholly owned by Clayco, but they all are self-reinforcing, but they also have responsibility to the outside world. So, for example, if you thought of the distribution company, CDC, it's there really to take de-risk projects and to accelerate speed of delivery. So it's out there procuring products in the world every single day to make projects go faster, but also to de-risk the materials that are going into it. That entity is responsible to not only the outside world, but also to Clayco on the projects that we work together, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Having a fully integrated design means that you can take that supply chain and you can now formulate a solution around it. And you can get very quickly to something that works with the municipality, works with code and area use development plans, and get all of the things pulled together that make a client's problem solvable. And then you mirror that in with the predictive analytics, with the parametric estimating, with the tools that we built as a pre-construction builder. And you now are layering in, I know what supply chain is. I've built some certainty around that. I now have the design attributes and outputs. I have a performance criteria that we need to achieve. And then we've threaded that together with a market solution so you can build a performer prospectus off of that and get it fungible. We self-perform things that you find on the critical path. So things like concrete. So our concrete strategies team does everything from dynamic foundations to building structures to building shells. But if you find it on the critical path and it's made of concrete, we do that. And then we have a glazing company called Ventana. That's to get the exterior on buildings and do that in a prefabricated module way so that while we're out, putting up the concrete frame, we're also building the exterior of the building. Again, accelerating time to delivery. But the true reason I'm at Clayco is because Clayco's looking at the world much differently than a traditional builder. That a traditional builder really likes the narrow segment that they play in, really tries to de-risk that as much as they can for themselves or their shareholders, whereas Clayco's got a much wider aperture and says, how do we control the overall project, the overall process? How do we get to the product delivery and solve that grand challenge in the world? And it's got a lot of tools at its disposal to do that. And then, lastly, we end up in spaces where we've got a client that says, my core business is manufacturing this product. I've now had my third or fourth billion-dollar weather event or something else has disrupted that business. How can I go and build a brand new facility somewhere where I don't have that issue again? And how do I not have it disrupt what I'm doing? We can even source the land and help them through that process too, through our real estate team.
Brilliant. Wow, there's a lot in that. We're going to get into that whole land acquisition when we talk data centers at the end. But two things I want to pick out of that. The predictive analytics is a huge thing. And I also want to talk about the prefab on the outside through the glazing company. Predictive analytics, first of all, analysis, that's a big thing right now. We're all talking about data when it comes to pre-construction and estimating. We all fundamentally know that if you don't do the pre-construction right, then trying to solve it on site is difficult and costly and costs you time. Talk to me at a high level about the analytics. Is it proprietary technology you use, or how do you go about it?
Yeah, that's great. So let me break it into just a couple of pieces. So there's the what it is and how it's going to work. And then there's the where it's going to, what it's going to cost, right? What the supply chain solution is. And then there's the time at which it needs to be there, right? All three of those are super important inputs to, being able to predict most anything, right? Like going and advancing and paying dollars out of an account earlier in the job than you actually needed is not helpful to your client in any way, right? Getting it to where the capital expenditure aligns with what is exactly needed to deliver their product as quickly as possible and get them to revenue. That's what's super important. So each one of those pieces to do, I think that prediction properly, you have to already have built a model. And so being an integrated design builder, it is super easy for us. So out there in the world, there are many organizations that say, yeah, I'll go and design in a model, but you can't use it for anything, right? The first thing they do is they have somebody sign a disclaimer that says you won't get quantities off of it. You won't do, materiality. You won't go and, because I'm not going to be responsible for it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
That's every pre-construction manager, every estimator's pet hate.
Yep. Yeah. And it's a silly proposition, really, but it is, risk management. It's attorneys getting in the middle of it. We're the opposite. We're like, if we're going to spend the time and develop a virtual project, we are going to go all the way through it from, something like a parallel reality where we can do all of that and move walls and size structural shapes and do dynamic forces on that building in a virtual environment, right? And then we're going to use that virtual environment and we're going to go and do quantification and figure out all of the pieces and parts we need. And then we're going to go to supply chain and make revisions back on that model based on what's available and the timing. If they're not rolling those structural shapes for another 6 months, we're going to pivot and do something different, right?
Unbelievable.
So then if you've got now all of those pieces, parts, and quantities, you can now bring in the sourcing team and go to market and say, okay, here's what it's been traditionally, here's where it is now, here's what the futures are saying about that piece, product, or commodity. And we can build a model around that that's custom for the project to really keep us on track and keep us aligned with that, predictability. And so those two things starting together. Now, the really neat aspect then is once you have all of that pulled together and you have the timing of the supply chain inputs, you have exactly what it needs to be to meet the design intent. You can go and build that three-dimensional model into time.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's now bricks and sticks, gravity, equipment that we're going to source, cranes that we're going to bring in, really bringing in that constructability layer. And then all of those things now affect the costing that we're going to build in and the cash curve for the project and then the financing structure for the deal. And so when you've done that multiple times, now you've got something you can baseline off of and predict from. Right now, you've got something that's market informed for present tense, and then you've got something that you say, "Hey, I just saw a big move in a commodities market, like a tariffed product that has aluminum in it," and you go, "What if we do something different, or what if we make a pivot change here? What does that do to the overall risk, delivery, and predictability of the project?" And so by building those models and doing them on a regular basis where the vocabulary is common, the clients know what they're going to get, we ultimately can come to them and say, here's how we phase your move in so that we're bringing in your tools while we're in delivery of your project. We're working with the municipality to say, here's how we're going to keep everybody safe doing it. And ultimately, when opening day means opening day, it doesn't mean here, now you can come in and do your second project, which is filling this with things you need to do, right?
Yeah, unbelievable. And I think that leads perfectly into the IPD and how fundamentally driven you are to deliver that. Before we get into IPD, let's talk about the prefab, the glazing side, because that idea of getting something out of the ground, having the structures in place, all the while building your facade or your prefab outside. Everybody wants to do it. How difficult is that?
It is not difficult to do without change. Change is what makes it difficult, right? And let me back up and give you like just another really key piece here. You will see us focus intently, myopically, or very early in our planning, so in pre-construction, on how are we going to keep every single person safe on this project. Okay, so if you just start with that and you say, I'm going to make sure that they've got the training they need, I'm going to make sure they know what they're doing, I'm going to make sure that they've got the right equipment to be successful, I'm going to think about the geometry of the design that allows them to access the work, I'm going to put them on the right side of the wall so that they can do the work safely as opposed to, hanging a scaffold off the side of the building. All of those things you make a lot of decisions based on that attribute alone. What I love about it is the project success also comes with that, right? So if you start with, I'm gonna keep every single individual safe on this project, it means that you've really well planned each one of the elements of that job. Yeah. It makes things like prefabricating the skin a really easy decision because you're enclosing a structure, you're removing a fall hazard, you're removing the ability for something to come out of the structural frame, right? Yeah. You're removing product being driven and dragged out of the building because you've enclosed it. And so you can kind of see how all of these parallel and how pre-construction is the key to it. The tricky part with prefabrication is recognizing what decisions are no longer available, what design change is no longer available, and then keeping track of that, right? So you'll see people show up and say, hey, I had this great idea. And you're like, hey, we've already built that product. Right? Or I've got this thing that I think I want to do to deal with the acoustics for the interior walls. And you're like, we're going to have to come up with something different because we've already launched that.
And then that is a common problem, Ryan. I mean, every company, small, medium, and large, comes up against that problem. Is that why it's so important during the design phase and the pre-con and estimating phase to be able to go through multiple options and pick one and stick with it, and how it ties into another part in the building?
Yeah, and the model helps, especially when you can bring the model and demonstrate what components are built where and do it in a visual space. People will do really well with things that are in front of them.
Yeah.
They just don't do super well with something that's, 1,000 miles away.
Yeah. But also they don't do well with something that is 45 pages long. Like
That's
we're all visual people. If we see it in front of it, we can almost feel ourselves in there, immersed in it. We can almost touch it. We see what color it is, how it lays in with everything else. I agree.
Yep. I Yeah, several years ago, I worked on a hospital project where the big room for the hospital project was in their existing building, and it was elevated. So we were up on the seventh floor. And the coolest part about that was everybody working on that project could look out the window and see the progress of the project.
Wow.
And so, like, if somebody had gotten, a request for information about a detail, they could walk up to the window and say, I see why that detail is super important because they are right there, right?
Brilliant.
They would feel the pressure of that decision. It also helped with all of those, decisions that would take you back in time. They're like, no, I can't. I can see it's already here on site, right?
Love it. Yeah. But that's the beauty of it, and you mentioned safety as well, because people talk about prefabrication. They talk about two things. They talk about money and time, but if it's safety in mind, that is the key driver. So I love that part. Now let's go to IPD. Talk
Yep.
to me, and let's kind of dumb it down for not just me, but for the junior people that might be listening as well. Fundamentally, what is IPD?
I'm gonna paint the simplest of pictures. It, if you want this is a business of there are thousands of things every day that will hold you from reaching your objective. If you're in our line of work of design and construction, like if you want a reason something didn't happen, you don't have to look very far, right? But if you want to make something happen, like you can make something happen in this business, but you're going to work at it. IPD is simply, I took the best and the brightest, I put them into a singular environment, and I said, here's the grand challenge that's in front of us. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. It doesn't matter whose responsibility it is. Like, I want the best ideas coming to the top so that we can solve it and move forward. That's IPD.
Yeah, love it, love it.
And ultimately, something on your project will come up and it will be somebody's fault. And you said, it doesn't matter. Like, we're moving forward. And by the end of this 45-minute session, we're going to have a plan of how we're going to go out there and make something happen in the world. That's IPD. There's a lot of contract mechanisms behind it. There's a lot of risk share. There's a lot of reward that goes with it. There are people that I work with here at Clayco, and they all gravitated here because of this. They found IPD somewhere in the world on some healthcare project or on some manufacturing job or some data center, and they said, I never want to work differently. I never want to be fighting with everybody again. Like, all I want is like the best team that we can go and make something happen.
So basically, it attracts the best players in the market as well. And it sounds like a solution driven, collaborative environment.
Yep. If you like to learn, you're going to love the IPD environment because you're going to learn about medium voltage infrastructure. You're going to learn about how to commission. You're going to learn, I mean, you're just having to pay attention to everything happening around you and what everyone else is working on. You're not getting something that's wrapped up with a simple bow that's getting handed to you and just say, follow these instructions. Like, you're having to dynamically think about, okay, what I just heard will affect these other aspects of the job,
Brilliant.
right?
And what's the response from the subcontractor trade partners when it comes to IPD? And also, are the clients now not demanding, but prioritizing IPD delivery?
Yeah, you've had many guests on your shows that totally get it and have done it multiple times. In the subcontract market, we've got that level of sophistication all the way down to somebody that's never done it. All they've ever done is a lump sum bid on a project before. And so there's a lot of education that goes with this. There's a lot of empathy and trust and transparency and communication that goes with it today. There's that same idea where you're working with a mechanical subcontractor and they're like, I love how you were looking out for me.
Yeah.
How you were keeping track of the things I was doing, how you were commissioning with me in real time so that my team could get better at building. So you can walk almost the instant when you put this idea out there on the table, whether somebody's done it before or not. And you have to really pause and recognize that we're bringing everybody along. We're not leaving anybody out on the outskirts, on being a truly integrated team.
Brilliant. Now, this might be a stupid question. I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Is IPD across all your markets, or is it more specific to the large, more complex projects? So you're across industrial, light industrial, manufacturing, data centers, advanced manufacturing, multifamily, mixed use.
There's aspects of an integrated delivery in most everything we do to varying degrees. A lot of it has to do with our client and the way that they want to go and procure the work as well. We still work with, and often, so I don't want to make this sound, but we deal with, hey, we simply want to rip and read, a construction or a build solution to the design that we got somewhere else. We've got that. On the other end of the spectrum is we have a performance criteria that we know we have to hit, and we want you to do the entire, source it, figure out where the land is, figure out how to design it, figure out how to deliver it, figure out how it's going to work. And I mean, in that aspect, we are completely integrated and completely tied in together. So it's, all of it exists in our infrastructure. What I do like about it is even when we're doing something as a true lump sum delivery, we're still doing the things that we do, right? We're still modeling it. We're still planning around that virtual environment. We're still putting together all of the pieces and parts so that it works. So you get a lot more when you're asking. You get a lot more certainty from us, I think, when you're asking for something that is a fixed and firm price.
Yeah, just to give people a taste, Ryan, because I know you're a humble guy. You've been described as a modern construction leader, and you've received 61 awards for design construction excellence. So something's working, let me tell you. You're doing something right. IPD and the idea, how much of that mindset, that philosophy, that culture has been responsible for all these awards?
I think quite a here. I'll go back and kind of give you this. If you can get anything that you're doing back to first principles, like what are we trying to achieve here? And then you went and started from scratch and said, okay, we're gonna build a framework on how we achieve this thing. I don't think you'd arrive at many of the things you find in the modern marketplace,
Yeah.
right? Like if an alien flew in and said, "Hey, how do you guys deliver, commercial real estate?" It would go like, "None of this makes any sense, right? You made it as risky as you could figure out how to make it, and you've got a whole bunch of these insurance agents in the middle, and attorneys." But
Yeah,
a lot of
I think the alien would jump back on a ship and said, "Nah, it's not even going to be worth it." I can see the madness unfolding already.
yeah, I'm gonna go find another society that hasn't. This is the really thing, and especially you mentioned the awards, is like when somebody finishes a job and was like, I am ready to do this again. Like I am like this. If you've ever done a renovation on your house, or you've ever had, you and your significant other going out and trying to pick a finish or something along those lines, you're like, man, this is hard.
Yeah.
But I know like those awards come with a team that says, man, I can't wait for the next one. This is my team. I would work with them tomorrow.
Yeah, you said it.
That's where it comes from.
You've gone through it. So process and people. That's the as you say, first principles. And one of the things you touched on, this will be last now because I know you've got a busy day ahead. You mentioned the cradle to grave, the land acquisition. We talked to Bill down in Phoenix at Rosendon how big the data center market is. But give us an idea what people can expect from Clayco Compute, because it's a new division within Clayco, and it's in a market that is on drugs at the minute. It's everywhere.
Yep. Yeah, and it is fast paced, high stakes, date certain, sophisticated supply chains and equipment that are coming in and being managed. If I gave you like scale for what we're doing right now, it's about 48 cents on every dollar is going through the data infrastructure. And Clayco Compute is really meant to be and will continue to be, the one of those national leaders of how do you take all of these things of how are we getting a performance design criteria? How are we how are we building componentry that is going to come into the project and really thread in at the exact right moment? How are we going to get the power that's going to feed this facility integrated into the facility so that you're delivering both the energy and the compute at the same time? That's what Clayco Compute is. It's an unbelievably powerful framework of getting to what is needed for this modern space race that we find ourselves in.
Yeah.
Um, the part that's really interesting, probably just for you, I mean, if I went back just several years, a big lease was a building,
Yeah.
right? And then if you went back a couple more years, a big lease was 1/4 or one data hall inside of a building, and so if you want to just follow the exponential scale, we went from a rack to a data hall to now a building, and now we're at the campus scale where we're dropping in on the same lease, 5 buildings at, you know, upwards of 230, 240 megawatts of compute. It's pretty formidable. At the exact same time, the elevators inside the buildings went from 5 to 7,500 to now 13,000 pound elevators because these computers are unbelievably sophisticated.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of challenges in that market. I mean, exciting challenges, but what I like about Clayco, and you've gone through it all, is the fundamentals, the first principles are all there to go and make it a real success. I've got 5 other points here, Ryan. We aren't even going to get through. I've been told I've got to keep the podcast to below 45 minutes, so I've got to stick to it. But it sounds like me there's going to be a part 2 here. So first of all, I want to thank you. Really appreciate your time. It's unbelievably exciting what's happening in the Southwest, not only for you, but then the overall Clayco brand. So appreciate your time.
Yeah, I thank you for having me. I really do believe that with everything we've accomplished, our most transformative work is ahead of us, and I'm super excited about it.
Oh, so are we. And we can't wait to probably check in 12, 16 months as well. Listen, if there is anybody that's listening to this now, Ryan, and they say, you know what, I've got a couple of questions I would just like to ping over to Ryan, whether it be a client, whether it be a subcontractor, where's the best place to get you?
Yeah, my LinkedIn is great if you want to just type me into a search bar and I can respond back that way. And then what I normally do is if it's going to be, hey, this is a longer answer, I'll send you my email address and we can connect that way.
Love it, Ryan. Yeah, I will. Listen, folks, in the show notes below, I will put in the link to Ryan's LinkedIn. Ryan Abbott, thank you again.
Have a great day. Thanks for having me.